September 1950. South Korea was only days away from collapse. The North Korean army had pushed South Korean and United Nations forces back to the very edge of the sea, confining them to a small defensive pocket known as Pusan. Many believed the war was almost decided. And at that moment of desperation, a reckless decision was made. An American general named Douglas MacArthur ordered an amphibious landing at one of the most dangerous ports in Asia. If it failed, the war would end immediately. The name of this gamble was the Battle of Incheon. The Korean War erupted on June 25, 1950, when North Korean forces suddenly crossed the 38th parallel. Well-equipped and battle-hardened, they advanced with overwhelming force. Within just a few days, the capital Seoul fell. The South Korean government was forced to flee, while the South Korean army collapsed in fragments under immense pressure. The United Nations quickly intervened, but the initial American units deployed were thinly spread and poorly prepared. They suffered repeated defeats in the early battles and were unable to halt the enemy's advance. By August 1950, all United Nations forces had been pushed back to the Pusan area in the southeastern part of the Korean peninsula. If this defensive line collapsed, the war would end, South Korea would disappear from the map, and America's military prestige after World War II would suffer a devastating blow. In this context, Douglas MacArthur, a living legend of the U.S. military, emerged like a high-stakes gambler. He had been the victorious commander in the Pacific Theater during World War II and believed that defense would only lead to defeat. According to MacArthur, the only way to change the course of the war was to strike directly at the enemy's rear, where they least expected it. The target he chose was Incheon, a port city located near the capital Seoul. But to military planners, Incheon was considered almost impossible to land at. The tidal range there was extreme, reaching up to 8 to 9 meters. Landing craft had only a few hours each day to approach the shore. The channels were narrow and easily blocked, while high seawalls forced troops to climb under enemy fire. Nearly the entire U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff opposed the plan, viewing it as a reckless gamble. But MacArthur remained resolute. He answered the objections with a short yet confident statement: Incheon will be the place the enemy least expects. The operation was named Operation Chromite. Tens of thousands of troops were mobilized, along with a powerful U.S. United Nations naval fleet gathering off the Korean peninsula. Reconnaissance aircraft continuously collected intelligence on tides, terrain, and North Korean defenses. Meanwhile, North Korean forces were convinced that the Americans would never risk a landing at Incheon. They concentrated their troops in the south, continuing the assault on Pusan. This proved to be a fatal mistake. At dawn on September 15, 1950, the sky over Incheon shook with the thunder of naval gunfire. The U.S. Navy opened the assault with a fierce bombardment of coastal defenses. This was followed by precise air strikes to clear the way. When the tide reached the necessary level, the landing craft began moving into the harbor. U.S. Marines faced enormous challenges. Many boats ran aground in thick mud, and soldiers were forced to climb rope ladders over high seawalls in cramped and dangerous conditions. However, the element of surprise proved decisive. North Korean forces were completely stunned, unable to organize an effective defense. On the very first day, key landing sites were secured, and enemy defensive lines rapidly collapsed. MacArthur's gamble began to pay off. After securing Incheon, United Nations forces immediately advanced toward Seoul. Fighting in the city was extremely fierce. North Korean troops defended every street and every building, but they had been completely cut off from supplies and reinforcements. On September 28, 1950, Seoul was officially liberated. The South Korean flag once again flew over the capital, delivering an immense psychological boost to the nation. Meanwhile, North Korean units in the south fell into chaos. From a desperate defensive posture, United Nations forces shifted to a full-scale counteroffensive. The Pusan perimeter was broken, and tens of thousands of North Korean soldiers were killed or captured. In just a few short weeks, the entire course of the war was completely reversed. The Battle of Incheon entered history as one of the most daring amphibious landings of all time and as the decisive turning point of the Korean War. The battle demonstrated that a single timely decision could change the fate of an entire nation, and that in war, boldness can sometimes be the key to victory. If Incheon had failed, the history of the Korean peninsula might have taken a completely different path, and South Korea might not even exist on the world map today. If you believe history is more than just dry numbers, but a series of decisions that can change the fate of an entire nation, please leave a like to support the video, and subscribe so you don't miss the stories of wars that changed the world. Thank you for watching.